From her hidden past in Tanchico to her dramatic betrayal of the Aes Sedai, this unexpected twist on her character has left fans divided and eager for more. But what's next for Liandrin in Season 4? Will she continue her path with the Dark One? Or is there more to her story that meets the eye? Stick around as we dive deep into her future in the series, and what might be in store for this controversial character. Liandrin's book origins and limitations. In Robert Jordan's original Wheel of Time series, Liandrin Geralt is one of the most recognizable faces of the Black Aja, a secretive faction who Aes Sedai pledged to the Dark One. From the moment she is introduced, she embodies suspicion and manipulation. However, her role in the books is ultimately narrow in scope. She lures Egwene, Elaine, and Nynaeve into a trap that results in their brief captivity under the Seanchan. Beyond that, her arc largely dwindles, with later books portraying her as a fallen and failed servant of the Shadow. More of a cautionary tale than an enduring threat. She never commands the narrative's momentum, nor evolves into a complex, layered antagonist. The show, however, takes a strikingly different approach. A darker, richer portrait in the TV series. The Amazon adaptation of The Wheel of Time radically enriches Liandrin's character. Instead of reducing her to a single-purpose villain, the show crafts a version of her that is cunning, emotionally nuanced, and ultimately torn between duty, ambition, and personal grief. One of the most striking additions is her dying son, an entirely show-original element, which provides unexpected humanity to an otherwise antagonistic figure. Her betrayal of the White Tower feels less cartoonish and more like a deeply painful choice, born from desperation and disillusionment. These layers make Liandrin not just more dangerous, but also more fascinating. Her internal contradictions and moral flexibility elevate her to a true political player and emotional wildcard, placing her in a position to influence not just her own arc, but the balance of power in the entire world. Breaking canon. Season 3 takes Liandrin far beyond her literary fate, positioning her at the center of a civil crisis within the White Tower. Her betrayal becomes the catalyst for internal chaos, dragging the Black Aja into open conflict with the loyalist Aes Sedai. This isn't just a personal decision, it's a calculated act of rebellion, one that exposes fractures in the Tower's authority and potentially leaves the world's most powerful institution vulnerable at a critical moment. By exposing Liandrin as a dark fiend early and thrusting her into confrontation with the Amerlin seat, the show dramatically increases the stakes. Her actions trigger violent fallout, including the deaths of trusted sisters and a reshaping of alliances. It's not only an expansion of her role, it's a redefinition. A Foresaken Alliance. One of the most explosive shifts in the show is Liandrin's emerging connection with Moghedien, one of the legendary Forsaken. In the books, Moghedien operates from the shadows with terrifying cunning. In the show, the decision to tie Liandrin directly to her intensifies both their presences. Moghedien represents unrestrained chaos and fear. Liandrin, on the other hand, is a woman grounded in tower discipline, despite her rebellion. Their potential alliance suggests a strategic expansion of the Forsaken's reach within human institutions. Liandrin becomes more than a traitor. She becomes an agent of apocalypse. This puts her on a collision course with every major force in the series, from the Dragon Reborn to the fractured Aes Sedai factions. Her link with Moghedien also suggests she may play a pivotal role in future Forsaken schemes, or even rise to become a Forsaken figure herself in spirit, if not in name. The tragedy beneath the villainy. Perhaps the most compelling feature of Liandrin's arc in the TV series is the suggestion that she is not purely evil, but tragic. The show explores her motivations in quiet, devastating moments, particularly through her relationship with her terminally ill son. This original addition to her character reframes her betrayal of the Tower as the act of a mother pushed beyond the brink. In a world where the Aes Sedai are trained to suppress their personal attachments, Liandrin's grief becomes a silent rebellion. She breaks the oaths not just for power, but for the hope, however slim, of finding an alternative path for herself and her child. This layer of tragedy forces audiences to empathize, even as they recoil from her actions. It's a bold reimagining that turns a stock villain into one of the show's most morally ambiguous and emotionally resonant characters. Liandrin as a political wildcard within the Tower. Unlike many characters bound by allegiances to Ajahs, nations, or prophecy, Liandrin exists in a liminal space, both inside and outside the White Tower's power structure. This makes her the perfect political wildcard. She is a sister of the Red Ajah, yet a traitor to their code, a servant of the dark, but not fully trusted by the Foresaken. She is a woman shaped by tradition and rebellion alike. Her presence destabilizes the Tower's internal unity, highlighting the fractures in its leadership and the failure of its hierarchy to adapt. In a world where power is tightly monitored and guarded, Liandrin's defiance signals a coming storm, one not just of war, but of internal collapse. This dynamic positions her as an unpredictable force whose next move could tilt the war between light and shadow in either direction. Shadows of redemption. Despite her betrayals, the show continues to hint at the faintest traces of guilt and regret within Liandrin. Whether it's the loss of her son, her conflicted expressions after obeying the Foresaken, or her visible tension when harming other Aes Sedai, there's a subtle thread of humanity that hasn't been entirely extinguished. These choices open the door, however narrowly, to the possibility of redemption. Could Liandrin turn against the Foresaken in a final act of resistance? Could she warn the Tower or help a main character escape danger? Her redemption wouldn't erase her crimes, but it could lend a tragic heroism to her legacy. This gray zone between total villainy and reluctant rebellion is rarely explored with female antagonists in fantasy, and the Wheel of Time series seems intent on giving her that space. A mirror to Morraine and the other Aes Sedai, Liandrin's evolution also serves as a thematic counterpoint to Morraine Daemondred, another powerful Aes Sedai who operates in secrecy and bears the burden of prophecy. Both women are brilliant, secretive, and committed to a cause that few understand. But where Morraine sacrifices her personal desires for the greater good, Liandrin sacrifices the greater good for deeply personal motivations. This makes Liandrin a dark mirror to Morraine, showing what happens when an Aes Sedai turns her back on duty. Their interactions reflect two paths of power, one guided by trust in fate and duty, the other by anger and loss. This rivalry isn't just magical, it's ideological. And as their stories continue to unfold, their contrast becomes one of the most emotionally and philosophically compelling dynamics in the series. Symbol of rot within the institution, Liandrin's arc is more than personal drama. It's symbolic of the Tower's internal decay. The White Tower is meant to be the stronghold of reason, unity, and magical order. Yet, Liandrin's betrayal reveals how deeply corruption and secrecy have taken root. She doesn't infiltrate the Tower, she is born within it. Her presence as a sister, fully trained and oathed, serving the Dark One, undermines the entire premise of the Tower's moral superiority. It forces viewers to question how many other Aes Sedai might be hiding dangerous truths, and whether the Tower is equipped to survive what's coming. Liandrin, in this sense, becomes a living embodiment of the institution's flaws, a product of its failure to see the humanity, grief, and rage simmering beneath its rigid laws, expanding the mythology beyond the books. Perhaps the most important role Liandrin plays in the show is metatextual. She allows the writers to explore the world of the Wheel of Time beyond the pages of the books. While the core arc still belongs to Rand al'Thor and the Dragon Reborn prophecy, characters like Liandrin are proof that the adaptation isn't afraid to chart new paths. Her invented storylines, especially the link to the Foresaken and her tragic motivations, show a willingness to deepen the lore and humanize even the antagonists. This creative risk benefits the show's long-term world-building. It sets a precedent for expanding secondary characters into fully realized, emotionally resonant figures who challenge the binary lines between good and evil. In doing so, it invites audiences to see the Shadow not just as an external threat, but as something that festers in grief, compromise, and unchecked ambition. Master of manipulation. While the Foresaken wield raw power and terror, Liandrin's strength lies in subtlety. She's not one to raise cities or openly challenge the light. Instead, she manipulates, sows discord, and preys on emotional vulnerabilities. From whispering in Egwene's ear to emotionally coercing novices like Nynaeve, she knows exactly how to twist a person's fears into loyalty or silence. This makes her far more dangerous than brute force villains. She understands the internal weaknesses of the Tower, the fault lines between Ajahs, and the personal wounds that make even the strongest Aes Sedai susceptible to doubt. The Forsaken may see her as a pawn, but her control over interpersonal dynamics could easily position her as a game master. Her ability to fracture trust among allies, plant seeds of rebellion, and deliver key information to the Shadow makes her the perfect infiltrator, a character who can do more damage through whispers than war. Nynaeve and Liandrin. One of the most compelling dynamics in the series is the unspoken tension between Liandrin and Nynaeve Almera. Early in Season 2, Liandrin seems to see something of herself in the young, angry Wisdom, someone with raw power, emotional volatility, and a distrust of the Tower. Rather than breaking Nynaeve down through cruelty, Liandrin attempts an unexpected form of manipulation, mentorship. This makes their relationship chilling, because there's almost a mother-daughter or mentor-prodigy layer hiding beneath the surface. Yet at every step, Liandrin's intentions are to pull Nynaeve off the path of the light. Their relationship becomes a warning that even those with the purest motives can be misled by trauma and pride. If Nynaeve is the embodiment of potential salvation, Liandrin represents what happens when that potential is corrupted. Their mirrored emotional arcs add a rich psychological layer to the show's magic-driven world. Liandrin and the Forsaken's long game. With her subtle rise in influence, Liandrin is becoming an essential cog in the Forsaken's long-term strategy to undermine humanity's resistance. Unlike brute enforcers like Eshamil or the unpredictable Moghedian, Liandrin can move within human institutions without triggering alarms. She's trusted, at least by some, and capable of relaying intelligence, sabotaging key players, or even delivering influential figures into the Forsaken's hands. Whether she's feeding information about Rand's movements or undermining the Tower from within, she plays a key role in destabilizing the world's last lines of defense. If Season 3 continues to lean into this direction, it's likely we'll see her operating as a handler or liaison for future Forsaken actions. The real question isn't just what she's doing for the Shadow. It's whether she's also positioning herself for a power play within the ranks. The cost of ambition. One of the most harrowing aspects of Liandrin's journey is how clearly the show portrays her willingness to sacrifice others for what she sees as a greater purpose, or at least a personal one. From trading away novices to aligning with monsters, she's demonstrated a brutal pragmatism. But unlike the cartoonish evils seen in some villains, Liandrin's sacrifices feel disturbingly human. She makes her choices based on logic, grief, or the illusion of survival. This layered depiction turns her into a representation of what happens when good people allow trauma to justify increasingly dangerous decisions. Her sacrifices make her more powerful, but they also isolate her, cutting her off from potential redemption and making her more vulnerable to being used by forces far darker than she realizes. Season 3 is shaping her not just as a villain, but as a woman who traded love, loyalty, and perhaps even her soul to escape a life she felt had caged her. The Unspoken Fear. Liandrin is a nightmare not because of her power, but because of what she reveals about the White Tower itself. She is proof that even the most sacred oaths can be bent or broken, that even a trained sister can betray the cause. Her very existence calls the Tower's self-image into question. If Liandrin could operate unnoticed for years, how many others like her exist? How deep does the corruption go? This creates a lingering paranoia within the Tower, one that could lead to internal purges, mistrust, and fragmentation. Just as the Dragon Reborn is supposed to unite the world against the Dark One, Liandrin's actions could divide the Tower when unity is most essential. Her presence doesn't just threaten the light externally, it gnaws at it from within, making her arguably the most dangerous woman in the Tower's modern history. What's next for Liandrin? The unwritten future. As the series diverges more boldly from Robert Jordan's original plotlines, Liandrin becomes one of its greatest unknowns. With her deepening ties to the Foresaken, particularly Moghedian, and her severed loyalty to the White Tower, she is now untethered from the Canon's limitations. This gives the showrunners creative freedom to push her into uncharted narrative territory. She could become a rival to Lanfear, a dark mentor to Egwene, or even a late-stage threat that forces the Aes Sedai and Dragon Reborn to unite in new ways. Her unique blend of emotional vulnerability and ideological conviction makes her unpredictable, and unpredictability is the currency of good storytelling. She may rise higher in the Shadow's ranks, positioning herself as a queenmaker among the Forsaken, or as a broker of chaos who manipulates tower and nation alike. Or, alternatively, she may begin to unravel, consumed by the guilt she buries beneath ambition. The emotional seeds planted in Season 2 suggest that the show may not give her an easy end. Whether she meets a violent fall, a rare redemption, or something entirely unexpected, one thing is clear: Liandrin's future is no longer written, and in a world shaped by prophecy, she is the kind of wild card that could burn the weave into something utterly new. The road ahead. As the Wheel of Time prepares for its most intense chapters, Liandrin sits at a precarious crossroads. She's more powerful than ever, both in influence and narrative weight, but her path is increasingly unstable. The Forsaken may continue using her as their eyes within the tower, or they may see her as expendable once her usefulness wanes. The White Tower, now more alert to threats from within, could begin hunting her down, setting up a dramatic confrontation. And perhaps most intriguingly, her relationship with Nynaeve and Egwene may come full circle, whether through betrayal, capture, or a final desperate plea for redemption. There's also the possibility that Liandrin will be pitted against one of the Forsaken themselves. Her growing disillusionment, her pride, and her grief could lead her to defy Ishanil's plans or clash with another servant of the Dark, making her both a threat and a tragic liability in their grand scheme. Alternatively, the show may use her as a cautionary tale, someone who made all the wrong choices for the right reasons, and who must now pay the price in a story that refuses to offer easy resolutions. Liandrin's evolution from a stern Red Sister into a morally complex villain, filled with scars, secrets, and a yearning for control, is one of the Wheel of Time show's most inventive narrative departures from the books. Her presence proves that even in a world shaped by prophecy and ancient magic, it is human pain, ambition, and fear that often drive the greatest acts of betrayal, and perhaps, one day, redemption.